The forest had been closed for nearly 30 years. No roads crossed it. No aircraft flew directly above it. Every map marked the area with the same warning. Restricted. No explanation. Just a silent space in the middle of the wilderness that everyone had learned to avoid. Then, on a cold October morning, a rescue helicopter changed everything. The crew had been searching for two missing hikers several miles away when one of the pilots noticed movement below. A man. He was walking alone through the trees, slowly, without panic, without looking around, as if he already knew exactly where he was going. The helicopter landed in a clearing. The rescue team rushed toward him. His clothes were torn beyond recognition. Mud covered every inch of his boots. His backpack looked older than the man carrying it. Its fabric had nearly turned to dust. The man's beard was long, his face was thin, but something immediately felt wrong. According to the identification card found in his pocket, his name was Daniel Mercer, an explorer who had disappeared 27 years earlier. Everyone on the rescue team assumed the ID belonged to someone else. It had to. No one survives alone for 27 years. Not in a forest with no food, no shelter, no roads, no contact with civilization. Yet fingerprint scans later confirmed the impossible. The man standing before them really was Daniel Mercer. The same Daniel Mercer declared legally dead decades ago. Doctors examined him as soon as he reached the hospital. His body told two different stories. His muscles showed signs of years of physical activity. Old scars covered his arms. His lungs contained spores unlike anything normally found in the region. But biologically, he had aged only a few years. Not 27, his heart, his blood, even his eyesight. Everything suggested a man barely older than when he disappeared. Scientists could not explain it. News spread across the country before sunset. The impossible explorer had returned. Reporters gathered outside the hospital. Government vehicles quietly arrived after midnight. Military officers entered through a private entrance. No one explained why. When Daniel finally regained consciousness, doctors asked the obvious question. Where have you been? He stared silently at the ceiling. His breathing became faster. Not from fear, from memory. His hands began shaking. He slowly turned toward the window. Outside, only darkness. After nearly a full minute, he finally spoke. His voice was barely louder than a whisper. I never escaped. The room fell silent. One doctor leaned closer. What do you mean? Daniel closed his eyes. His face filled with something far worse than fear. Regret. Then he said the words that would change everything. Don't let anyone follow me back. Moments later, every monitor beside his bed began flashing. His heartbeat accelerated. Doctors rushed forward. But Daniel was no longer looking at them. He was staring into the empty corner of the room, as if someone else had entered. Someone only he could see. Then, he smiled. Not with relief, not with happiness, with recognition, and quietly whispered, You're already here. Daniel Mercer refused to speak for the next 3 days. Doctors tried again. Investigators tried. Psychologists tried. Every question received the same answer. Silence. But while Daniel remained quiet, his past began speaking for him. Authorities opened sealed archives that had not been touched in decades. Inside was the original expedition file. Daniel had not entered the forest alone. 7 explorers had gone with him. Each was among the best in their field. A survival expert, a geologist, a biologist, a cartographer, a photographer, a radio engineer, and Daniel, the expedition leader. None of them were thrill seekers. They were professionals, with years of experience in some of the world's harshest environments. So why enter a place everyone avoided? The answer came from a satellite image. 28 years earlier, a weather satellite had captured something impossible. Deep inside the restricted forest, a perfect geometric shape appeared for less than 6 minutes. It looked like the ruins of a massive city. Straight roads, square buildings, circular towers, too precise to be natural. When another satellite passed overhead, the city was gone. Officials blamed a camera malfunction. Most people accepted the explanation. Daniel did not. He requested access to every available image. After comparing dozens of photographs taken over several years, he noticed a pattern. The city appeared only under extremely specific conditions. The same week. The same season. The same angle of sunlight. Always for only a few minutes. Then it disappeared again. He became convinced something was hidden beneath the forest. Something that revealed itself only at certain times. Funding for an expedition was approved. Officially, the mission was geological research. Unofficially, they were searching for the impossible city. The team entered the forest in early autumn. Their equipment was state-of-the-art. Satellite navigation, emergency radios, backup generators, enough supplies for 6 weeks. Every precaution had been taken. On the first day, everything worked perfectly. On the second day, strange problems began. GPS units drifted several hundred meters while standing still. Compass needles spun without stopping. Digital watches displayed different times even when synchronized minutes earlier. The radio engineer reported hearing voices between transmissions. At first, they sounded like static. Then they became clearer. Someone was whispering names. The explorers assumed another team was nearby. There wasn't. By the fourth day, the forest itself seemed different. Trees marked on their maps could not be found. New hills appeared where valleys had existed only hours before. Trails vanished behind them. The cartographer drew the landscape repeatedly. Each map looked different. No two versions matched. The photographer documented everything. Hundreds of pictures, thousands by the end of the week. Many later developed as nothing but black images. Others showed locations the team never remembered visiting. Then came the final radio transmission. It lasted only 11 seconds. Heavy breathing, footsteps, someone shouting. Then Daniel's voice. "We found it." A long silence followed. Then one final sentence. It wasn't buried. The transmission ended. Every signal from the expedition disappeared at the exact same second. Search teams entered the forest within 48 hours. They found abandoned campsites, cold campfires, half-eaten meals, equipment still powered on, but not a single explorer. It was as if all 7 people had stood up together and simply walked away. No footprints, no signs of struggle, no bodies, no explanation. For 27 years, that was where the story ended, until Daniel Mercer walked out of the forest alone, and investigators finally opened the backpack he had carried out with him. Inside was an old camera. Its memory card was somehow still intact. What they found on it would force everyone to question what was truly waiting inside the Forbidden Forest. The camera looked beyond repair. Its screen was cracked. Its lens was chipped. Mud had hardened around every button. The battery had been dead for decades. At least, that was what the investigators expected. A forensic technician carefully removed the memory card. Everyone assumed it would be unreadable. Instead, the computer recognized it immediately. The folder contained 1,842 photographs. Most of them were corrupted. Some displayed only gray static. Others were filled with strange blocks of color that no software could restore. But 143 images opened perfectly. The first photographs seemed normal. The expedition members were smiling. They were setting up camp, checking maps, testing equipment. Nothing unusual. Then the scenery began to change. The trees became taller, their trunks twisted into impossible shapes. Branches seemed to bend toward the camera, even when there was no wind. In one image, the shadows stretched in different directions at the same time. Experts examined the photograph for signs of editing. They found none. The lighting simply made no sense. The next series of pictures stunned everyone. Stone roads, perfectly straight, covered by thick roots that looked centuries old. The roads led toward massive buildings hidden beneath the forest canopy. Walls taller than modern apartment blocks. Columns carved from a black stone no geologist could identify. Not a single crack. Not a single sign of erosion. It was as though the city had been waiting, untouched, silent. One photograph showed a gigantic circular plaza. At its center stood an enormous black doorway. It had no visible hinges. No handle, no frame, just a tall opening carved into a single slab of stone. Beyond it, only darkness. Not shadow, darkness. The kind that swallowed light itself. Investigators increased the brightness of the image. Nothing appeared inside. It was as if the doorway opened into an empty void. Then they reached photograph number 117. Everyone in the room fell silent. All 7 explorers stood together, smiling, healthy, no injuries, no fear. Daniel was in the center. Behind them, the black doorway towered over the city. The image looked ordinary, until someone checked the metadata. The photo had been taken 23 years after the expedition disappeared. That was impossible. The camera battery could never have lasted that long. Even stranger, the timestamp matched no calendar ever created. The year existed, the month existed, but the day listed on the file did not. It was a date that had never occurred. Investigators assumed the camera had malfunctioned. Then they noticed something else. Every explorer cast a shadow, except one, Daniel. His feet touched the ground, but no shadow appeared beneath him. Image analysts zoomed in, frame by frame. Behind the group, a figure stood between two pillars, watching them. No one had noticed it before. It resembled a person, too tall, too thin. Its arms reached almost to the ground. Its face was hidden behind complete darkness. The expedition members appeared unaware of its presence. The figure appeared again in another photograph, closer, then another, closer still. It never changed position while the explorers moved around it. It simply waited, watching. In the final clear image, only Daniel remained. He was looking directly into the camera, not frightened, not surprised, as though he knew exactly who would one day find the photograph. Written across the stone beside him was a sentence. Not carved, not painted. It seemed to glow from inside the rock itself. Linguists from around the world studied the symbols. Weeks passed before one researcher offered a translation. Just 5 words. One returns, so others follow. The room became silent, because Daniel Mercer had returned. And somewhere inside that impossible city, something had expected him to. The photographs were enough to reopen the case. Within days, a new expedition was approved. This time, it was different. The team included military personnel, scientists, geologists, linguists, drone operators, and search and rescue specialists. Nothing would be left to chance. Every member carried 2 GPS units, 3 radios, satellite phones, body cameras, motion sensors, environmental scanners, even portable weather stations. If the forest behaved strangely again, every second would be recorded. Daniel Mercer refused to join them. He spoke only one sentence before they left. "You're not going to find the place." The expedition leader frowned. "We have your photographs." Daniel slowly shook his head. "No, you have where it was, not where it is." No one understood what he meant. 3 days later, the expedition entered the restricted zone. The first 20 kilometers were completely normal. Birds filled the trees. Streams flowed through the valleys. Every instrument worked perfectly. Some of the team quietly wondered if Daniel's story had been nothing more than trauma. Then, at exactly 2:17 in the afternoon, everything changed. Every GPS unit displayed a different location. The nearest readings were over 12 kilometers apart. Yet every member of the team was standing shoulder to shoulder. The radio operator tried contacting base camp. Only static answered. Then a voice emerged, soft, calm. "This way." Everyone froze. The transmission had come through every radio at once. No one had pressed the transmit button. The voice repeated itself. "This way." The words sounded familiar. Too familiar. One scientist suddenly burst into tears. He recognized the voice. It belonged to his father. His father had died 8 years earlier. Another researcher heard his sister. A soldier heard his wife. Each person heard someone different. Yet every voice said exactly the same words. "This way." The team leader ordered every radio switched off. The voices stopped instantly. No one spoke for several minutes. That evening, they camped beside a narrow river. Motion sensors were placed in a full circle around the tents. Nothing crossed the perimeter all night, or so they believed. The next morning, the recordings were reviewed. Every sensor had activated at precisely 3:03 a.m. Something had entered the camp, then left again. The cameras showed nothing. No person, no animal, only the tents. But one detail chilled everyone. Each activation moved closer to the center of camp, as though something invisible had walked between them while they slept. No footprints were found. The soil remained untouched. On the 5th day, the forest began changing. The cartographer marked a massive oak tree beside the trail. An hour later, they passed the same tree again. Impossible. They had walked in a straight line. They turned around. The tree was gone. The path behind them no longer existed. Drone operators launched 3 aircraft. The live video looked normal, until one drone climbed above the treetops. Instead of seeing endless forest, it captured an enormous circular clearing. In the center stood dark ruins, exactly like Daniel's photographs. The operators marked the coordinates. The team walked toward them. After 4 hours, nothing. Only trees. They launched another drone. The clearing now appeared 5 kilometers east. Without moving, it had somehow changed location. That night, strange sounds echoed through the forest. Not animals, not wind, footsteps. Hundreds of them, slow, perfectly synchronized, circling the camp. The soldiers searched with powerful lights. Nothing. The footsteps continued, always just beyond the trees, never getting closer, never moving away, just circling, waiting. At sunrise, the sounds stopped. The team packed their equipment in silence. Then one of the linguists noticed something carved into a nearby tree. The bark had been untouched the night before. Now 6 words were deeply etched into the wood. You should have stayed out. No knife marks. No fresh wood. The letters looked decades old, as if the message had always been there, waiting for someone to finally notice it. The expedition pressed deeper into the forest. None of them realized that from somewhere beyond the trees, someone or something was quietly following every step they took. On the 7th morning, the forest suddenly ended. No gradual clearing, no thinning trees. One step, there was wilderness. The next, there was stone. An enormous city stretched across the valley below. No one spoke. It was exactly as Daniel's photographs had shown. Long avenues cut through rows of towering black buildings. Massive staircases climbed toward empty plazas. Statues lined the streets, each facing the same direction, toward the center of the city. The drone footage had been real. The city existed. Yet no satellite had ever been able to capture it for more than a few minutes. The expedition moved carefully down the ancient road. The silence was overwhelming. No birds, no insects, no wind. Even their footsteps sounded strangely distant, as if the city absorbed every echo. The geologist knelt beside the road. The stone was unlike anything he had ever studied. It wasn't granite. It wasn't basalt. It wasn't any known volcanic rock. Laboratory scanners returned the same impossible result again and again. Material, unknown. The buildings were perfectly preserved. No collapsed roofs, no broken windows, no signs of weather damage. Some structures looked thousands of years old. Others appeared newly built. Yet every street was empty. No bones, no tools, no furniture. Nothing suggested that anyone had ever lived there. And that was the most unsettling part. It didn't look abandoned. It looked paused, as though every inhabitant had simply stood up and left at the exact same moment. The team entered the largest building they could find. Inside, the air felt colder. Their flashlights illuminated enormous halls supported by black columns. The walls were covered with symbols. The same symbols from Daniel's photographs. The linguists immediately began documenting them. One repeated pattern appeared everywhere. A circle. Inside it, 7 small marks. And beyond the circle, one larger mark. No one understood its meaning. Hours later, they reached the center of the city. The plaza was larger than several football fields combined. In the middle stood the black doorway. It was far larger than anyone had imagined. Nearly 30 meters tall, carved from a single piece of black stone. No seams, no cracks, no visible signs of construction. It shouldn't have been possible. The doorway cast no shadow, even though the afternoon sun stood directly behind it. One scientist aimed a powerful laser into the opening. The beam vanished. It didn't strike a wall. It didn't reflect. It simply disappeared. Another researcher threw a small stone inside. Everyone listened. No sound ever came back, not even an echo. It was as if the stone had ceased to exist. The expedition leader ordered everyone to keep a safe distance. No one argued. Then something unexpected happened. Every electronic device shut down at the same instant. Body cameras, GPS units, radios, environmental scanners, even mechanical watches stopped ticking. Only one device remained active. A digital voice recorder clipped to a linguist's jacket. Without anyone touching it, it began playing audio. At first there was static, then footsteps, then voices. 7 voices. The team immediately recognized them. They belonged to Daniel's original expedition. The recording had never been loaded onto the device. Yet there they were, speaking calmly, walking toward the doorway. One voice laughed. Another said they had finally found the answer. Then Daniel's younger voice became clear. If you're hearing this, a long pause followed. Don't open the door. The recording stopped. The voice recorder switched itself off. The silence returned. No one moved. Then one of the soldiers looked toward the doorway. His face turned pale. He slowly raised a trembling hand. There wasn't anyone there before. Everyone followed his gaze. Standing inside the darkness of the doorway was a single human silhouette, perfectly still, watching them. No one had seen it arrive. And when the expedition leader whispered, "Who's there?" the figure smiled, then answered, in Daniel Mercer's voice. No one spoke. Every member of the expedition stared at the dark figure standing inside the doorway. It looked exactly like Daniel Mercer. The same height, the same posture, the same voice. But Daniel Mercer was hundreds of miles away, under military protection. The expedition leader took one cautious step forward. "Identify yourself." The figure smiled. "I already did." Its voice echoed through the silent city, not loudly, yet every word seemed to come from every direction at once. The soldiers raised their weapons. The figure did not react. One soldier switched on a powerful spotlight. The beam reached the doorway and vanished into the darkness. The figure remained perfectly visible, but nothing around it reflected the light. It was standing inside impossible darkness. The expedition leader ordered everyone to fall back. Before anyone could move, the figure disappeared. Not by walking away, not by fading. One blink, it was simply gone. The team searched the plaza. Nothing. No footprints. No heat signature. No sound. It was as though no one had ever been there. Then the body cameras restarted by themselves. Every screen displayed the same message. Playback available. No one had pressed a button. Curious and uneasy, the technicians reviewed the footage. The first few minutes were normal. The team walking through the city, examining buildings, scanning the doorway. Then something impossible appeared. Each camera showed an extra person. Not the same person, a different one beside every explorer, walking silently, matching their pace, always just behind their shoulder. No one had noticed them in real time. Frame by frame, the investigators watched the invisible companions following every member of the team. Whenever an explorer stopped, the figure stopped. Whenever they turned, the figure remained just outside their vision. Facial recognition software failed. The faces were blurred, not by motion, by something else. The pixels seemed to distort only around the strangers, as if the cameras themselves could not focus on them. One scientist suddenly became pale. The figure following him looked familiar. He enlarged the image. His hands began shaking. It was his older brother, missing for 15 years, declared dead after a climbing accident. Another researcher recognized her grandmother. A soldier saw his best friend, killed overseas. Every explorer was being followed by someone they had lost. No two people saw the same companion, but the cameras captured them all. Without warning, the city echoed with a distant bell. One deep tone, then silence. Every figure on every camera slowly turned and looked directly into the lens. At the exact same second, the expedition leader ordered an immediate retreat. No samples, no more photographs. Leave everything. Just get out. The team hurried back through the empty streets. But something had changed. The road they had entered from was gone. Every street now ended at another black building. The city had rearranged itself. They ran in every direction. Each path led back to the central plaza. Always back to the doorway. Always back to the darkness. Panic spread. One of the linguists stopped running. He stared into the doorway. His breathing slowed. A smile appeared on his face. "They're calling me." No one else heard anything. Two soldiers grabbed him. He struggled violently. "They've been waiting. They're not dead. They're home." His voice no longer sounded like his own. It sounded older, calmer, as though someone else was speaking through him. Then he suddenly stopped resisting. He looked directly at the doorway and whispered, "I remember now." Before anyone could react, he broke free, walked calmly across the plaza, and stepped into the darkness. There was no scream, no sound, no flash of light. He simply vanished. The doorway became silent again. The team rushed forward. There was nothing inside. No body. No footprints. Only endless darkness. Then, from somewhere deep beyond the doorway, a familiar voice echoed back. The missing linguist spoke only 4 words. "Don't close it yet." No one moved. The voice was unmistakable. It belonged to the linguist who had disappeared only seconds earlier. Yet it did not sound frightened. It sounded peaceful. The soldiers called his name. No answer. One of them tied a climbing rope around his waist. "If he's alive, I'm bringing him back." The expedition leader grabbed his arm. "Daniel warned us." The soldier looked at the doorway, then at his teammates. "If we leave him, we're proving this place wins." Before anyone could stop him, he stepped into the darkness. The rope slid through their hands. 1 meter, 5 meters, 10, 20. Then it suddenly went slack. The team pulled with all their strength. The rope came back, cleanly cut. Not frayed, not burned. It looked as though it had never been attached to anyone. Silence filled the plaza. Then, without warning, every electronic device switched on at once. The radios crackled. Body cameras began recording. The voice recorder started playing. And the satellite phone rang. There was no signal in the city. Yet someone was calling. The expedition leader answered. For several seconds, there was only breathing. Then a familiar voice spoke. It was Daniel Mercer. Not the older Daniel in the hospital. The younger Daniel, from 27 years ago. If you're hearing this, you still have time. The leader's heart raced. Daniel, where are you? A soft laugh came through the speaker. You keep asking the wrong question. Another pause. You should ask, when? The line went dead. Everyone looked at each other. No one understood, until the geologist noticed something impossible. His wristwatch was moving again. But not correctly. The seconds were spinning backward. Every mechanical watch on the team did the same. One researcher opened his notebook. The ink from notes he had written that morning was fading, sentence by sentence, until the pages became blank. The city wasn't simply changing space, it was changing time. The expedition leader suddenly remembered Daniel's medical report. His body had aged only a few years. Not 27. Now it finally made sense. Daniel hadn't survived 27 years in the forest. For him, only a short time had passed. The doorway wasn't a tunnel. It wasn't a cave. It wasn't even a place. It was a fracture. A place where time no longer followed the rules of the outside world. Minutes inside could become decades outside. Or the opposite. The black doorway wasn't hiding monsters. It was hiding another reality. One where yesterday, today, and tomorrow existed together. The linguist hadn't disappeared. He had simply crossed into a different flow of time. The soldier might still be taking his first step. Or he might have lived an entire lifetime. No one could know. Then the voice recorder clicked on again. This time it contained a conversation. The team froze. Every voice belonged to them. But none of them had spoken those words. Don't trust the first Daniel. He's trying to save you. The second one isn't. A long silence followed. Then another voice whispered. There are two. The recording ended. Every member of the expedition slowly turned toward the edge of the plaza. Someone was standing there. Daniel Mercer, wearing the same torn expedition clothes from 27 years earlier. He raised one hand. Don't listen to him, he shouted. Before anyone could respond, another Daniel Mercer stepped out from the opposite side of the plaza. Older, the same age as the man lying in the hospital. He looked at the team with desperate eyes. Then he yelled, "Whatever you do, don't let the younger one reach the doorway." The two Daniels stood on opposite sides of the plaza. They looked identical. The same face, the same scars, the same voice. Only one difference separated them. Time. The younger Daniel looked exactly as he had on the day the first expedition vanished. The older Daniel was the man who had walked out of the forest 27 years later. Both were shouting. Both were warning the team. And each claimed the other could not be trusted. The expedition leader lowered his weapon. Which one is real? The younger Daniel answered first. Both of us. The words echoed through the empty city. The older Daniel closed his eyes. I hoped you'd never meet him. The team demanded an explanation. The older Daniel took a slow breath. When I crossed the doorway, I didn't travel somewhere else. I traveled across time. I spent years trying to find a way home. When I finally escaped, another version of me was still inside. The younger one hasn't lived through what I have. He still believes the doorway can be controlled. The younger Daniel laughed. Because it can. He stepped closer to the black doorway. You only fear it because you failed. The ground began to tremble. Cracks spread across the plaza. The ancient statues turned ever so slightly. For the first time, they were no longer facing the doorway. They were facing the expedition, watching. The older Daniel shouted, "Don't let him open it again." Before anyone could move, a deafening roar echoed across the city. The sky darkened, not with clouds, with shadows. They moved like living smoke, circling high above the ruins. Then every radio on the expedition came to life. Different voices, different languages, hundreds of transmissions, all speaking at once, until they merged into one sentence. The cycle begins again. Suddenly, military helicopters thundered overhead. Dozens of them. Black aircraft circled the city. No one had called for help. The helicopters landed beyond the plaza. Heavily armed soldiers poured into the ruins. Behind them walked several officials wearing plain gray suits. One elderly woman stepped forward. She carried no weapon, only a weathered leather folder. She opened it and looked directly at the expedition leader. "You've seen enough." The folder contained documents marked top secret. Some were over a century old. The oldest report dated back to 1903. It described a military survey that had discovered the same black doorway. Every member of that expedition had disappeared. Another report came from 1938. A scientific mission entered the city. Only one researcher returned. He claimed decades had passed inside, while only 3 days had passed outside. His testimony matched Daniel's almost word for word. There were reports from 1957, 1974, 1975. Each ended the same way. A team entered. Most never came back. Those who did returned only briefly. Every survivor disappeared again within months. The final page contained a single order signed by multiple governments. Erase all maps. Remove all records. Deny the city exists. The expedition leader looked up in disbelief. "You've known about this for more than 100 years? The elderly woman nodded. "We never protected the world from this place." She glanced toward the doorway. "We protected this place from the world." The younger Daniel smiled. "They're too late." A deep sound rolled through the city, like a massive stone door unlocking somewhere beneath the earth. The black doorway began to glow, not with light, with stars. An entire night sky appeared inside it. Constellations moved impossibly fast. Galaxies drifted across the darkness. Then, slowly, a gigantic silhouette began to emerge. It was too large to fit through the doorway, yet it kept coming. The older Daniel whispered the words he had feared for 27 years. It finally found the exit. The sky above the silent city went completely dark. Not because night had fallen, because the stars inside the doorway were brighter than the sky itself. The enormous silhouette stopped moving. Only part of it was visible. Yet it was already larger than the tallest building in the city. No face, no eyes, only a shape that seemed to bend the air around it. Anyone who looked at it for more than a few seconds became dizzy. Some fell to their knees, others covered their eyes. The elderly government official spoke calmly. "Nobody looks directly at it." The expedition leader turned away. "What is it?" She answered without hesitation. "We don't know. We've never seen all of it. We've only seen what fits through the doorway." She handed him a small digital recorder. "We've been waiting for someone to hear this." The label on the recorder read, "Archive 01, Final Message." The expedition leader pressed play. A man's voice filled the silent plaza. "My name is Professor Elias Ward. If you're listening to this, then we failed." The recording continued. "Our expedition entered the doorway in 1957. We believed we were exploring another place. We were wrong. It isn't another place, it's another direction. We walked beyond time, beyond distance, beyond everything we understand." There was a long pause. Then distant footsteps echoed in the background, slow, heavy, getting closer. Professor Ward continued speaking, but his voice had become quieter. "It learns by watching. It copies memories. It copies voices. It copies people." Another pause. "It copied us." The footsteps stopped. For several seconds, there was complete silence. Then another voice answered. It was Professor Ward's own voice. Identical. Same tone. Same breathing. But it said different words. "Don't leave. We've been waiting." The real professor began breathing rapidly. "You hear it? If you can hear it, it already knows you." A loud metallic crash echoed through the recording. People were shouting. Someone screamed. Then came one final sentence, barely a whisper. "Never trust the one who comes back." The recording ended. Silence returned. Every person standing in the plaza slowly looked toward Daniel Mercer, then toward the younger Daniel. Neither spoke. Neither moved. The expedition leader realized the horrifying truth. No one could prove which Daniel had returned from the doorway and which one had been sent by whatever lived beyond it. Before anyone could react, the younger Daniel smiled. His skin began to ripple. Not like flesh, like a reflection on disturbed water. His face shifted. For one brief second, he wasn't Daniel at all. He was something else. Something impossibly tall. Something with far too many limbs. Then, his human appearance returned. He looked at the team and quietly said, "You were never supposed to notice." The doorway suddenly expanded. Its black edges cracked open. The ground shook violently. Every statue in the city turned to face the same direction. Not the doorway, the expedition, as if they had been waiting for new arrivals. No one fired a weapon. No one ran. Every person in the plaza stood frozen as the black doorway continued to expand. The stars inside it slowly disappeared. They were replaced by something even darker, an endless horizon, without sky, without ground, without light. It looked less like a place and more like the absence of reality itself. The younger Daniel took one step toward the expedition, then stopped. He smiled. "You still think this is an invasion?" He slowly shook his head. "It isn't. It's a return." The older Daniel stepped in front of the team. His voice trembled. "Don't listen to him. He doesn't remember being human anymore." The younger Daniel laughed. "You're wrong. I remember everything. My first expedition, my family, my friends, my death." The last word echoed across the silent city. The expedition leader stared at him. "Your death?" The younger Daniel looked toward the doorway. "The Daniel who entered this place never came back. I only carried his memories." A cold silence settled over the plaza. The older Daniel closed his eyes. He had known the truth all along. The man standing beside the doorway had never escaped. Something else had. The creature smiled gently. Not with cruelty, with certainty. "You fear us because you believe you're separate. We've been observing your world for longer than your history remembers. We never hunted you. You kept finding us." The enormous silhouette behind it slowly faded back into the darkness. The doorway began closing, stone by stone. The city trembled. Buildings dissolved into drifting black dust. Roads cracked apart. Statues collapsed without making a sound. The ancient place was disappearing. The older Daniel turned toward the expedition. "Leave. Now." No one hesitated. The team ran toward the edge of the city. Behind them, the silent ruins vanished into a wall of rolling fog. Within minutes, the forest surrounded them once again. Birds sang, wind returned. Their GPS units worked perfectly. The city was gone. When helicopters arrived hours later, they found no ruins, no black doorway, no statues, only untouched forest stretching to the horizon. Search teams spent months scanning every square mile. Nothing, no stone, no roads, no evidence that an ancient city had ever existed. The official report declared the expedition unsuccessful. Every photograph was classified. Every recording disappeared into government archives. The public was told only one sentence. No unusual structures were discovered. 3 weeks later, Daniel Mercer vanished from the secure medical facility where he was being guarded. Security cameras never showed him leaving. His room was locked from the inside. The only thing investigators found was a trail of damp footprints. They began beside his bed, crossed the room, and stopped at a solid concrete wall. There was no door, no window, nothing. Only one final message, written across the wall in fresh black dust. The doorway never stayed in one place. 6 months later, a new Earth-observing satellite captured an unusual image over an uninhabited mountain range thousands of miles away. For exactly 17 seconds, a perfect black city appeared. Then it vanished. The image was quietly removed from every public database. Officially, it never existed. But somewhere in the world, the doorway is waiting for someone to find it again. And if the old reports are true, it has already learned your name.